Hi, everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm a life and relationship coach. And I've been helping people for over 40 years using the deep well of Bowen family systems theory to help them to self-differentiate beyond their recovery as a kind of advanced stage of recovery, and help people to become themselves in their own family systems and their relationship systems, at work, in organizations. I work with adult children of alcoholics, adult children of narcissists, and other adult children issues, codependence, as I'm a recovering codependent myself, family problems, business problems, life direction problems, career problems. And this video is entitled 3 Steps to Self-Differentiation. Though self-differentiation can be complicated, I wanted to try to simplify it the best that I could. And people ask me all the time, what is self-differentiation? What does that mean? And this program is not an exhaustive discussion of self-differentiation. It's an overview with an example to try to help you with that. So what is self-differentiation? Differentiation is the active, ongoing process of defining self, revealing self, clarifying boundaries, and managing the anxiety that comes from risking either greater intimacy or potential separation in a relationship. Murray Bowen defines it as the degree of resilience to the interpersonal contagion of anxiety in a relationship system. How well and how mature do we handle anxiety in our relationship systems? You can also think of self-differentiation as taking responsibility for the management of one's own anxiety and reactivity and issues. There are 3 basic components to self-differentiation work: self-awareness, self-definition, and self-regulation. And if you notice, all of those are focused on the self. So many times we get focused on the relationship, the marriage, the dating relationship, the boss relationship, the friend relationship, instead of focusing on ourselves as we function in the relationship. First of all, self-awareness. Self-awareness is vital for becoming more self-differentiated. Can we go inward and begin to see how we function in the system, how the system operates in us, how we get reactive? But self-awareness is about going inward, noticing your thoughts, your feelings, your reactivity, your anxiety level, and your emotional field as it relates to other people when you're functioning in relationships. So how can we grow in self-awareness? Calmness awareness is very important. Just being aware of how calm we are or not, that's self-awareness. Doing a feelings list and learning to identify your feelings. Finding your feelings within yourself. There's great lists online that you can print off a list of feelings. And that we don't confuse our thought process with our thinking process. If somebody says, well, how are you feeling? I'm feeling judged. Well, that's not on the feeling list. That's a conclusion that you've come to. It's a thought. So then we identify, well, if we have that thought, how do we feel? And that's from the neck on down. And so we can begin to identify our feelings, not just our thoughts. We can do journaling. That's another good way. Letter writing to different people, to different parts of ourselves. And you might ask, if I could be heard and understood, and I could write anything, what would I write? if I had no fear of what would happen with anyone else's reactions. And that's a way to get at feelings as well. Then I also talk about pre-interaction awareness work. In other words, if we're going to interact with our family members or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or sisters or whoever, our boss, we want to do pre-interaction awareness work. In other words, as I go into this, what am I feeling? Before I even get there, I want to know me before I get there, because that will gain you a lot of liberty and a lot of awareness about your own process. And then I use role plays often in my work, and role plays are a good, very quick way to have people become aware of things without explaining a bunch of stuff. You just do the role play and see how they interact with you. I often play the person, I often play them and let them play the person they're having difficulty with. Husband, wife, boss, friend, whomever. And then what I will do is allow them to borrow my objectivity, and then they start to become aware more of their internal process and more self-aware. Second of all, there's self-definition. Well, that's important. Self-definition is, who am I? What do I believe? What is important to me? What are my values? How do I see things? And one of the first processes in learning to do that more is asking yourself, well, do you have a right to define yourself? Do you have a right not just to be yourself, but can you define yourself? And I remember in my work learning how to do these types of things, I began to at least let me explore what I believe and how I would define myself, even before I would take it to a relationship or an active live relationship. I want to find out where I'm at. Even if I'm scared or not ready to share an I statement or an I position or tell people how I feel, I want to get to learn, what do I believe? What do I think are important? What are my values? What are my morals? How do I understand how the other person is reacting and acting? What's my belief about that? So we must resolve that you have the right to your own thoughts, the rights to your own beliefs, and the rights to how you see things. What do you believe? What do you think? How do you see it? How do you see things? And at least practice, this is how I see things. This is what I believe. Right or wrong, and I could even be wrong. But I remember a psychologist, theologian, and priest, Adrian Van Kaam, Kaam, a Roman Catholic priest, psychologist, and theologian. And I used to read his books often because I thought they were a real help for growth for me. And he would talk about entering the no man's land of no commitment. In other words, we go into a relationship not committed to anything or any beliefs or anything that we're aware of for ourselves. And so we begin to change that in our self-differentiation work to where, well, this is what I believe. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I'm not sure who I'm going to share it with. But this is what I believe. This is what I see. This is what I think about the situation and the relationship. Or you may want to accept readily you're not ready to have a position on that yet. I'm not ready. No one can make me be ready for that, and I can own that. Or accept that you don't know what you think about that. You know, I've gotten into arguments with people trying to persuade me of different things, and I'll say, I don't know what I believe about that. Well, you need to have a belief. I don't need to have a belief. My belief is I'm not ready to have a belief about that, or I don't know what my belief is. That's even self-defining. Let me move to self-regulation, which is number 3. I have a number of videos and podcasts on systems thinking and self-regulation. How do I regulate myself in this moving system of a relationship? And this work is about seeing the bigger picture, seeing patterns, widening your lens. This is the zooming back work. Seeing the big picture helps us to detach and get relief. This reframing of what is going on is so crucial, which is also why I do role plays. I've got a workshop coming up where I'm going to do a lot more role plays with participants, because it's a good learning process. Because it will change you very quickly if you're able to step into another perspective. And we want to ask these types of questions when we're trying to regulate ourselves. Why do they trigger me? Is it hurt, shame, guilt, abandonment? What do they trigger inside of me? Where does that trigger come from? And has that trigger been there long before they came into the relationship? Into my world of relationships? Why do they matter so much to me? Why is that so important? And they matter so much I just give my power away. Why do I give my power away to them? What do I fear? Why am I so anxious? What dependency needs or issues are they activating? And I'll talk about that in my example here. Why am I thinking in this relationship? Where my thinking becomes activated by my reactive feelings. And I think the best way to begin to work on that is to do some reading and to learn about that. Based on self-regulation, I'd read Jenny Brown, Brené Brown, who's very popular these days, Harriet Lerner, Lerner, Roberta Gilbert. And then if you want to do that, say, within a marriage, I like the book It Takes One to Tango, talking about how you change you to help change a relationship, or at least to set it up for change to be happening. But you have to focus on you first. It takes one to tango. And then in the business world, Roberta Gilbert's books on leadership are very helpful. Peter Senge, S-E-N-G-E, is great for business, like the Fifth Discipline and the Learning Organization. He uses a systems approach to help businesses to become healthier, to grow, to be more mature. And I would recommend those things for self-regulation and self-differentiation in a system, whether that system is a marriage or whether that system is a family business or a corporate entity. There's an example I wanted to share with you. I had a client who was always struggling with her big sister. And her big sister was always kind of bossy, rather critical, controlling, and pretty self-absorbed. And this sister, it always caused her angst and pain and reactivity, and she just hated it. And she hated that relationship she had with her sister. And it was not that her sister always treated her badly, but it was just always a relationship fraught with lots of high anxiety and lots of reactivity within the the client I was working with. And she would state how she would feel hurt, put down, abandoned, fearful, as she began to become self-aware of how do I feel about engaging in my sister, and when my sister calls, and you know, she just dreaded her sister calling. She dreaded calling her sister. And she'd say, whenever I talk with my big sister, I feel anxious, and I don't know what to do with myself. So she was very non-self-differentiated, undifferentiated, and she was very caught up in the emotional system. And it would just control her. The system feelings and what was going on would just control everything inside of her, all of her thought process. That's the feel-think process. And so she practiced these 3 steps with me. First, self-awareness. I'm triggered. I'm reactive. About what? Let me get underneath that and what I'm reactive about with my sister. Becoming aware that we are reactive, that we are anxious, that we have often been all of our lives, and that she began to unearth the feelings of fear, the feelings of abandonment, the feelings of issues that her sister could trigger, which then keeps her in this very uncomfortable relationship with her sister. Then she began to work on self-definition. Well, what do you want? And she began, well, this is what I want. This is what I believe. This is how I see my relationship with my sister. And I'm going to clarify and define how she acts in my opinion. Now, I understand we're not the last word on everything in the universe and how we see it, but we have to start with how we truly see it and not stay in the no man's land of no commitment about our thoughts, beliefs, feelings, etc., morals, values. And so she began to be more clear about, well, this is what I think is going on. And this is how I see my sister acting. And I don't like that. And I don't think it's right. It's not a model for me. And it also causes me a lot of reactivity. And then in self-definition, we look at, well, what do we want? And I would ask her, what do you want with your sister? Well, of course, we should always often start out with unrealistic wants. Well, I'd like her to be the big sister I always wanted. I would like her to accept me, value me, and see things the way I do. Those are unrealistic wants. They're not unreasonable. They just are unrealistic for who her sister was. And so we don't want to focus on our unrealistic wants, though it's helpful to unearth our unrealistic wants. And then lastly, self-regulation. And that comes in, okay, well, first I want to regulate me, so I'm going to stop and resist trying to change her, my sister. I need to stop trying to change, perfect, change myself so she'll be happy with me, because it probably won't work anyway, or only will work as a quick fix, but not a real solution. And then we begin to toy with the idea that if I had no guilt, if I didn't feel intimidated or fearful, or if I didn't have abandonment triggered, what would I say or do or want? And then we would do a role play about that and give her lots of information and objectivity about what she could say, do, or want from a more detached perspective, regulating herself rather than trying to fix or regulate her sister so she could feel better. I hope that you will follow me on YouTube and you'll subscribe to this channel. I hope you'll listen to my podcasts on all the major streaming apps. Join my Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter. I also would recommend you join my Silver plan, which is, there are 3 plans on YouTube you can join. There are 3 plans on my website you can join that have different benefits. And join the Silver plan to join those of the Silver plan and Gold plan who become part of a monthly call that I host and answer questions for all of those members. I want to thank you very much for listening today. Have a great day and be wise.